Spectre Vision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Somebody stepped into me from behind. I stood there and I went to sing, and somebody stepped into my body from behind me. Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. I hope you're all doing well. It's a really tricky time we're going through. I wanted to remind you all of this kind of analogy I have around the time that we're moving through and this idea of kind of waiting to be born. There is a point in labour of a child when the contractions have reached a point that it's become an unbearable environment to be in. The baby kind of gets squished into this space where it doesn't yet feel like there's anywhere to go. The cervix is still closed, and this environment is no longer a place that the baby wants to be in, and it eventually it is that kind of pushes them through the membrane and into a new way of being. And without trying to downplay anything that is happening in the world at the moment, because we're all feeling the pain and suffering, and that's just witnessing it. To be caught up in what's happening at the moment must be absolutely horrendous. And everyone is at different places with this, but I just want to offer this because it helps me to think of it in this way, that there are these thresholds in our lives, and there are these thresholds in our world, for in individual lives and experiences, and for the collective. And this is a really huge time. And I know that if you listen to this podcast and podcasts like it, you will understand that we are here at this time for a reason. And my belief is that we're all here to do something at this time. And that might just be, taking care of your family. And it might be that you're in a position to really help people that are going through the difficult times, whether that is kind of financially, or whether you're able to, some people are giving their lives to go to places to help, whether they're journalists, whether they work for international medical organizations or something else. We will all know what it is that we are called to do at the moment, because it's what our heart will be telling us to do. So I just want to offer that. And it really does make a difference to have community. So find your people. What is really helping me right now is a Buddhist group on a Monday evening. It's free to attend. I go and I sit in peace with people, and we meditate, and it's all led by somebody, so I don't have to do anything or think about anything. And it's just that hour once a week makes a huge difference to my life. Our Patreon group, we meet every month, and some of the things that we've been doing together have just really helped me. So whether this is an online community that you find, or whether this is your local community, you will be able to find your people. Just follow your nose and trust your instincts with things, and having some kind of community right now, because often when we hold values different to our family, it's very hard to be able to find a space where we can just be ourselves. Luckily, I do have a wonderful family, but I know not everybody does. And I know that it's very difficult at this kind of great division and polarity to, to find people that you can just actually express the difficulties that we're all going through and how that's affecting you on a personal level. So always reach out, because there will be somebody that will understand. I will add some links below this too for people that, that may want to be looking at finding a local Buddhist center, or, finding like a pagan moot in their area, or, a group that might just be tending to the local area, litter picking, looking after plants. All of these things will really aid us all at this time. And this very much kind of leads into what I want to talk about. And this is an episode that I have been talking to my group about making for a long time. And it's just kind of been finding the right time to talk about it. And I'm not sure that there's ever a particular time, but I'm finding that this time is now. And it's really about the kind of veils between the worlds. We have this idea that if somebody is, passing on from this realm to the next, that they're no longer with us. And equally, if we're, having a child and really kind of calling them in, and they're not here in the material realm yet, that we feel that, again, they're not with us. And in my life, I found neither to be true. They are with us. And it's particularly helpful to recognize that if you've lost somebody that's very dear to you, whether that was 20 years ago or whether it's been a really recent thing. And so, what I want to offer today is my experience of my relationship with people that have passed over. And in particular, when my father passed, because I had one of the most profound experiences of my life where I really felt the all in my awareness, in my embodied awareness. I really felt the sense that we are all part of everything that exists in this universe. And so I will be talking about death. I don't feel that it's any kind of, upsetting areas that I'm going to talk about. But just be aware that I will be talking about the passing of loved ones. But I will also be talking about the real sense of love that, that it still exists when they are no longer in this realm. So I hope this helps. I want to also preempt this by saying that I recognize that in my father's case of passing, he died a really good death, what we would call a really good death. He was surrounded by loved ones. He had got ill fairly unexpectedly, in a way that we knew that he hadn't been feeling right for some time, but we didn't realize to the extent at which his illness was going to affect him so deeply. And he went in for treatment, and effectively the treatment didn't go so well, and he just didn't really come back. And he had a number of days when he was in hospital, and they very kindly gave us a room, a private room, where family could come and be with him. And this is what I mean by good death, because I recognize that, when we think about death, I think to have the time to say goodbye to somebody when they're leaving you is a real privilege. And we don't always have that opportunity. And I will be talking about a situation like that afterwards too. Sometimes people leave us and in really shocking ways. And we don't feel that we had the chance to tell them how much we love them. And some of us lose people in the most unbearable ways, and some of us, lose our children, and that's just unthinkable. And we think about the loss of life in the world at the moment too. It's unbearable to think about that. So I recognize that what I'm going to be talking about is a very blessed situation, actually, given the circumstances that arose. My siblings and I had enough time to know that, Dad was passing and that we were going to be with him. And so, surrounding him in this private room, we kind of had the opportunity to do things in the way that felt right to us. My family's Irish, my dad's Irish. And so, in that room, we had a very precious 3 days where we were able to play music to him, his favorite, old Irish music. We told stories about the things that he'd told us in his life, um, things that we really loved about him, really silly things that he'd done. And all this time, I had the sense that he might be able to hear us, but he couldn't respond. But we certainly could feel the love in the room with all of us. And there were moments where, it was just perhaps my mother spending time with him and having that one-on-one with him and telling him how much she loved him in really important parts of somebody's passing, where we gave them that space just to have those very precious intimate moments. And then, as I say, there were others where we were together and crying together, laughing together, telling stories together, singing together, and just remembering these beautiful times of my father's life. And at one point I thought about, well, it kind of arose, the sense that I wanted to help my father in the situation that he was in. Now, throughout throughout the kind of 15 years previous, when he had been ill and I couldn't be with him because he'd had to say go to hospital on the mainland because we lived in Jersey, then I would use healing to aid him. It's a very simple thing to do. Anybody can do this. I used a proxy, which was a teddy bear. So I had quite a large teddy bear that had belonged to my elder children. And I would hold the bear and I would prepare to do a healing in whichever way. You can do this whichever way you want to. You could light a candle, you could say a prayer, you can do whatever feels right to you. And I would be in this peaceful space and imagine that my dad was, this teddy bear, and I would place my hands on the place on the teddy bear where I thought it would help. Now, I might start with his heart, my hand on his heart, showing him, giving him, sending him my love, and visualizing that love going into him. If he had an operation in a certain part of his body, I would do the same in that part of the body, and you could move to several parts of the body. And so this was something that I had, practiced doing, kind of tuning into him in this way. And I'd also been taught by a very good friend, Martin Brofman, who had taught me body mirror system healing. He had told me about his practice and experience in taking people over into the other realm. And I had a real sense that this might help my dad. And so when there were several of us being very quiet in the room, at this point, I think my sister was opposite me on the other side of the bed holding his hand, and I was on sort of this side of the bed holding his hand. I held his hand in my hands and I went into meditation, and I sent him love and healing through his hands. And then at some point, and it's very difficult to remember this exactly because bits of it are kind of missing now, but I had the sense of taking him over to the other side. And I cannot remember how we got there. I can't quite remember if we went through something, but where we got to was a place of light. It was very, very bright light, and there were steps coming. There were steps. We were at the bottom of some stairs. And I began to see people walking down these stairs. And some of them I recognized. They were elder members of my dad's family, his much older brothers and possibly some of his sisters, but I remember his oldest brother was there, um, coming down these stairs to greet my dad. Some of the other people, I just didn't know who they were, but they were so happy to see him. And it was really beautiful to witness that and to remember that now. And he went to them and he walked up the steps with them. And that was it. That was, and I, you know, had was able to come away, and it was really peaceful and really beautiful and really, it was really such a beautiful scene. Um, and it was extremely powerful. Um, and not long after this, more of the family were in the room again, but the children, interestingly, had left the room. And at some point during this little window, my dad suddenly sat up, took the wires out, and kind of opened his eyes and took a really deep breath. And we called him up, Dad. And then he lay back down. He didn't respond to us. He was looking upwards towards something. He took a deep breath, and then he kind of, his body lay back down, and then he had passed. And it was quite just an incredible moment. If anyone has ever witnessed a passing, I felt very blessed and honored to have witnessed the passing of somebody that I loved so much. It was unlike any other experience I've ever experienced. Really profound. And afterwards, what was amazing was that, once we'd got over the shock, and we all, spent some time with him alone, was that it didn't look like him anymore. And you realize how much of someone's spirit is, of how much of someone's spirit makes that person. It's like it's the life, we are inspirited, we are inspired, we are the life, looking out of these eyes now, looking out at the world. We are spirit inhabiting a vessel. And it was so clear that this is how it had been, because the vessel now, this vessel that had taken my father through his life, and this amazing life where he had, been a cyclist, a really award-winning cyclist in the 30s, in the 50s, sorry, in Ireland. This body that had, been a bodybuilder and, started the first gymnasium in Jersey in the 60s, when everyone thought that keeping your body fit in this way was utter madness. And, this body that had, been there for all of his children, and worked, really physically hard all his life as a builder, using granite and putting beautiful buildings and walls together, and really good at what he did. And this body was now no longer required, and he had gone somewhere. And so over those 3 days, there was nowhere else that I had wanted to be than by his side. And I know that my family felt the same. And after I had spent some time with Dad's body, I needed to just get out of the hospital. I just needed to get out of the hospital for the first time in a few days. That's how I felt, because it had been hard to go home and sleep before then, knowing that things might happen overnight. But now it was time to get home. But it didn't feel right to go home either. And so when we got outside into this kind of harsh world where people were still driving around and people were talking and shopping, and, how were they carrying on when my dad had just died? And I know this is how people feel. But what I knew what I needed to do, and that was to get my swimming costume and get in the sea. As I say, we lived in Jersey, and my sister came with me. We just went home, we just grabbed our swimming costumes, and we just went to a little cove. This was the middle of July, and it was a really hot day. And it was a little cove, and it's not very well known, but it was busy, with people on the beach. And we just, in a kind of trance, just got into the sea. And we began to swim around. We went right out beyond, the people, children playing on the beach, and the people in the shallower parts. We just went quite deep, and we each were vaguely aware of each other, around each other, but we were kind of just taking some space alone to grieve and just crying our hearts into the sea. And this is where the next incredibly profound moment happened, because suddenly, as I'm there in the sea, I have this profound gnosis, moment of gnosis. I suddenly became aware that my dad was everywhere. He was here. He was with us. He was there. He was in the sea. He was in the seagulls' cries. He was in the shouts and the squeals of the children's voices on the beach. He was in the trees when I looked at the trees on the shore and they were moving in the breeze. He was in the trees. He was in the rocks. He was everywhere. And it was just the most incredible feeling that, as I say, this kind of embodied sense of, ah, yeah, he's here, but he's everywhere. And I felt like that was a gift from my dad. And maybe it's a gift that when we lose somebody, maybe we all get to feel that in some way. I don't know, because I've never experienced such a great loss like that of somebody so close to me. But suddenly everything made sense. And I realized that we really are part of everything. Each one of us, we go back to the all, and we are the all. And And it all just was so clear in those moments. And it stayed with me, actually. It wasn't just a moment. This realization stayed with me for a long time. I was able to still tap into that sense of gnosis. And so we had the wake not long after, and we had been busy as a family preparing all of this. We knew that Dad would really want music because it was an important part of his life. He played the mouth organ, and wherever he went, it's lovely to think of it now, but he always kept a harmonica in his pocket. If he was going out, if they're out anywhere, he'd always have this his gift with him, his gift of being able to play music with others, because that's what he loved most. If there was a bit of, if the crack was happening and people were singing, he could get out his mouth organ. And so we had some people that knew Dad actually came and played, and my friends who also came and played, and a number of us, we're going to sing also. Now, I was going to sing much later on, or I think that I was kind of building up the courage to sing. And the funeral was beautiful. The wake was, it was joyful. In fact, somebody, extended member of the family who didn't know us too well at the time, I suppose, remarked to me afterwards that it's the first funeral and wake they'd been to that they really enjoyed because it was so joyful. And anyway, towards the end of the evening, I had plucked up the courage to sing this song. Now, it was "She Moved Through the Fair," which is, an Irish song, and it was my grandmother's song, apparently. And as in that, it's a very old song, but this is a song that she would sing. My dad's mother, and as I got up to sing, I had a microphone. There were about half the people left at the wake by this point, so it was just really kind of close family and friends. And what I felt happen was, again, this another profound experience. Somebody stepped into me from behind. I stood there and I went to sing, and somebody stepped into my body from behind me. And suddenly, when I began to sing and my voice didn't sound like me, it was the most amazing voice. And I mean, I can sing, but people afterwards were saying, "Oh my God, that was incredible!" Like, because it it came from somewhere else. It was almost like it wasn't my voice. Something was singing through me, but I had actually felt their presence in my body, as if somebody had taken over my body and sang this song. And it was really, I mean, mind-blowing. It just shook me to the core, in a sense that it kind of filled me. And I talked to my brother about it, and he couldn't believe it and he also sung. I think he sang after me. This was after, I think it was after the wake that I was able to speak to him about this. And I told him what had happened. And I say he couldn't believe it because the same thing had happened to him. Now, he's not into all of the things that I'm into. He's a very grounded person. He's not really into spiritual stuff, although he's obviously very open and a beautifully loving and sensitive person. He's not into any of this. And he said he couldn't believe it because what happened to him was he got up to sing, and he said it was like somebody kicked the back of his knees. They buckled a bit and somebody stepped into him, which is interesting. So it was like he got the extra boomph of somebody, really kind of pushing to get in, maybe. And for me, perhaps I was just open to it. I don't know what the difference was there, but he felt exactly the same as me. Somebody took over and began to sing through him. So it's so interesting how all of these traditions we have, you know, the traditional opportunity, the laying out of the body, and before that, when somebody's passing, we have the process where if when somebody's dying, they're able to be with their family, be surrounded by their family, and their family are able to have the freedom to use that time whichever makes sense to them, whether that is praying or whether that is sitting quietly or whether it is, whatever it is. For us, it was the way that we felt it, that dad, what dad needed. But it's such an important part of death process that in our culture we often don't honor and don't recognize. And I say I completely recognize I'm speaking from a place of privilege here, in that, you know, our family kind of were open to doing things this way, and that there was nobody holding us back from that, that the hospital supported us in that we knew and loved dad well enough to have a sense of what he needed. And none of these things are a guarantee when we lose somebody, and I recognize that. But where it's possible, where it's where it's possible, if you can't get the hospital, if the hospital are not able to, support you in that, maybe there's somebody else that can liaise with the hospital on your behalf to get them to see things the way that you need to be able to hold somebody's passing. For us, the priest at the funeral was somebody that knew dad, and again, so that was very precious and a real privilege. With the wake, we were able to do things the way that we wanted to, and we kind of insisted on that, really. All of these traditions aid us in really being able to honor somebody's passing, so important, and doing it in a way that aids you in your grief process. Because for me, all of this really aided me. And to know afterwards that I could just cry whenever I wanted to, which I did allow myself to do. I just allowed myself to cry whenever I needed to. And that really aided my process too. So the last kind of bit about that I want to talk about with dad's passing is that not long, only a month later, we moved to Bristol, and I always felt that dad came with me. And there was one particular day when I was walking back to where we were living, and it was just in the first couple of weeks of being in Bristol. And suddenly he was by my side. He was walking next to me on the pavement as I walked up the street. And the presence of your dear loved ones and the particular presence of them. And yet there was nothing that I could see there. There he was. He was right next to me, and he walked up the street with me by my side. And it felt like he was just saying to me, yeah, I'm here, I'm with you. And I'm so grateful for that. And it's almost like I could have touched him. It was quite amazing. So all of these gave me an insight into, what happens when we're gone. When we're gone from this realm, we're not gone at all. And I have always still been able to talk to him. And so I'll make a space and I'll light a candle and I talk to him all the time, but particularly when I really feel like, oh, I really need to talk to you, Dad. And I so wish that he was sitting on a chair in front of me now and that I could have that experience with him in that way again. And I can't, but I can still speak to him. And so I want to let you know that you can also do this with your loved ones that have passed. You just light a candle if you feel like doing something like that, or go to a, a special location that feels safe and meaningful to you, or just, make sure you've got time away from whoever it is you're living with and just be able to have some space alone in your bedroom to speak to them. However it makes sense to you, however it feels best to you. But you can do this, and you can do what I did, which is to take somebody over, particularly if somebody is frightened of dying. And if you're not sure, you can always, when you're holding their hand, even if you can't be by their side, even if you are at home and they're hundreds of miles away, you can imagine you can do the same. You can do the same with that teddy bear, the proxy. You can place their hand in yours and say, I'm here, you know, I'm here, and I can aid you in this. And be prepared for a sense of no. You might get a sense of, oh no, this feels wrong. It's not wanted. And you can respect that. But if this is somebody that you've been very, very close to and you had a close relationship, and that this was something that was kind of okay between you and something that might be helpful to that person. Maybe they're alone somewhere and they haven't got anybody with them, or a situation like that, then this is something that can help. And it can even help if it's somebody that you wish you'd got on better with in your lives, if it's a parent, because sometimes when they're in that state and they're about to go, they don't need to hold on to those difficulties anymore, and something else comes through and allows them to come back to who they truly are and let go of those more difficult aspects of relationships, because it doesn't matter anymore, and a part of them realizes this. So this can also, whether you are helping somebody over or whether you are speaking to somebody that has passed, don't think that just because things were difficult when they were alive, that they're going to be difficult now. Sometimes this can actually provide an opportunity for healing, and it really does. Now, a couple of years back, I did speak to a friend who was in a similar position with her father. Her father was at the point of passing. All of the family had rushed up there. At one point, it looked like he was going to go quite quickly, and she spoke to him. She did what I had shared with her, and she was able to be with him. And she also went to take him to meet who he was going to meet on the other side. Now, what happened as a result of her speaking to him was that he actually came back. And what that meant was that he got to spend some time with family that hadn't been able to get to him when it looked like he was first going to pass. And she called me afterwards and she said, thank you so much, because it had made such a difference in his passing. So again, in these kinds of situations, we can really talk to somebody, even if they're wired up and they're not able to respond. We can still speak to them, and we can still trust what we're receiving from them, and we can still tell them how much we love them, at the very least, and we can tell them how much we're here for them. And if we allow ourselves to open to what might, be as a response from that person, they might tell you what it is that they need, and we can learn to trust that. So I wanted to offer that too. Um, some of you out there might have experienced some or all of this, and I'd really love to hear from you if you have. It's wonderful to be able to talk about it with people that have experienced it. And I was very grateful to this friend who then came back to me and talked to me about how it was with her dad's passing, because we were able to kind of exchange notes around that, and that felt really precious. And it's been really helpful to be able to talk about it with my family as well. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that, sometimes people die in shocking ways, and or in very, you know, in ways where we're never going to be able to get a chance to be with them before they go. And we had a situation like that with a very, very dear family friend. He was a lovely, lovely person, and I think about them a lot. I loved them. I really loved them. And they died in a shocking way and very unexpectedly. When I got the phone call that they had passed, I was on my way to a summer solstice gathering at a friend's who lives in the middle of nowhere. And I was completely in shock and trying to be with the person on the other end of the phone that was telling me about what had happened, about this person's passing, that none of us could ever have predicted. And when we got to the other side, I obviously just needed to take myself, when we got to my friend's house, I just needed to be able to take myself off and have some quiet time. And she had been keeping bees on in her garden, in a kind of far reach of the garden. And so I mean, it's just perfect when I look back. That was kind of the only time that I visited that home, her home, where she kept bees, because all of the other times I visited, she no longer had bees. And I was able to go into this little clearing with the bees. And it felt such a intuitive thing to do. I began to, I went into a meditative state and I reached out to him. And I think about this a lot. What I found was that, first of all, it it was like lots of cloud. If you can imagine being in a cloud, and I was trying to find him. And after a while, I found him, and it was like he didn't know that he died. He was, I mean, it feels funny to say that he was in a state of shock, because obviously he had passed, but he didn't know that he had passed, and I had a real strong sense of that. And I held him in a way that I could, a very loving way, and I was able to talk to them, and be with them. And then I then did what I did for Dad, and I took them to the light. And I can't remember for them what happened there, but I had a very clear sense at the time that they were able to now go over. And I believe that this happens for people sometimes, is that when somebody has died in an accident or similar, or in a really shocking way, that this can happen, that sometimes the spirit is unaware that the person is unaware that they have died. And so I'm offering that too, in that if we know of somebody that has been in a situation like this where they have passed very suddenly, praying for them really, really does help. And it really helps just to see them be able to reach the light in their own way. This was something I was taught many, many years ago in the late 90s, when we were kind of doing this, attending this kind of mystery school workshop setup. I was taught about clearing, more for kind of clearing, homes. And if you came across a spirit, that you would open the like opening a trapdoor in the room or opening the ceiling, and you would see them going to the light. So that's one way to think of it. Or you could use any other kind of scenario that makes sense to you, but it's really important to see them be, held by the light and brought into the light lovingly. However that scene can be as loving as possible. So, we're working with these ideas that we are not just our physical selves. We are beings of light, of spirit, of love. Every single one of us, even if we've forgotten that about ourselves, even those that have forgotten that about themselves, we are part of everything. And that when we lose people close to us, they are still with us and they can be right next to us. And if we can aid ourselves by giving ourselves a space just to connect with them, we can, have a really lovely relationship with those that have passed. That they are, love never dies. We never really lose our loved ones. They stay in our hearts, and we carry them in our hearts, and we carry them in the way that we live our lives, what they meant to us, how they changed us, and in our memories. And so these are really tricky times that we're moving through. But if we can really remember this about ourselves, and if we can really keep those connections with the all, with loved ones that have passed, praying and sending love to those who are dying in really shocking circumstances, and honoring how hard all of this is too, being kind to ourselves about that and what our needs are when we're experiencing all of this. As I say, for me, finding peace with others is everything at the moment, because we are realizing and discovering and rediscovering how much life means to us and how much love is what gets us through. And I believe that, others that are still taking time to remember that, I believe they will come to it too. I do believe they'll come to that in time. And yeah, just really taking care of ourselves and each other. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. I know that speaking with Dr. Helen Stickney recently, as part of our group that came together on Patreon, Helen did an exercise with us, or led us through, really beautifully held us through an exercise, a meditation visualization of our own death and our own passing. And I mean, it brought up so much beauty and meaning for all of us. And it really brought things home, what our values are, what's important in life. And it's our loved ones. And it's how much we could be there for one another. And it is being able to spend time with those that you really love, and doing things that you really love, and what really what it really meant to you to be alive. So I want to thank Dr. Helen Stickney for her help with, with that recently. And I am going to be getting Helen on for a chat. We've talked about discussing that more deeply, because it is such a real gift. So thank you very much for for watching and listening. And I fully appreciate that I talked about a lot of difficult and very sensitive areas. And if you want to write to me, you're so welcome. And I also want to say, at the moment, I'm just in my last, 3 weeks of writing, finishing my book. Everything's kind of coming to a head with that. And so I do take time to answer emails at the moment, and I'm really behind with my admin. But I am hoping to get this book finished. Things have been slow with the Patreon at the moment. We've only been doing our own kind of little get-togethers, and not so many general releases. And this is why. It's just because I'm completing this book, and it's taken everything in me to do that. But I really hope afterwards that it's something that also can help people. So thanks again. Lots of love to you all. And from April, we're going to be back on track, and lots of interviews and releases. Just so many, because there's lots to catch up on. So love to you all.
And of all the money that ever I had, I spent it in good company. None of all the harm that ever I done, alas, it was but none to me. And all I've done, for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. And of all the sweethearts that ever I had, they are sorry at my going away. And of all the friends that ever I had, they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I gently rise, and I softly call, good night and joy be with you all. Man, if I had money enough to spend, and leisure time to rest a while, there is a fair maid in this town who sorely has my heart beguiled. Her ruby lips and rosy cheeks, to me she has my heart enthralled. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all.
Spectre Vision Radio.